Alien doctor shocked as human body heals from fatal wound, best HFY stories. Dr. Zayler, a seasoned alien physician from the planet HFY, had encountered countless species in his years of intergalactic practice. His vast knowledge of biology, anatomy, and the countless ways different lifeforms healed had earned him respect across the galaxy. Yet, nothing in his career had prepared him for what he was about to witness. It all began when the human, known as Captain Marcus Hale, was brought into the HFY medical facility. He had been grievously injured during an interplanetary skirmish. A blast from an alien energy weapon had torn through his chest, leaving a wound so catastrophic that any ordinary creature would have perished in seconds. By all logic, Hale should have been dead long before he even entered the med bay. Dr. Zayler observed the human from behind his diagnostic screen, his antenna twitching in curiosity. He had treated many species before, each with their own healing processes, some faster than others, some requiring complex treatments. However, the human was something different. With a wounded chest, and vital signs weak but not completely failing, Zayler had already prepared for the worst. He began his routine examination, trying to stabilize the human's condition. The HFY medics worked quickly, attempting to apply a healing serum that was effective in most cases. But with Hale, something was off. The serum didn't seem to take hold the way it usually did with other species. Instead, a strange phenomenon occurred. As Dr. Zayler ran a scan, he noticed something that defied logic. The cells in Hale's body were regenerating at an unprecedented rate. The wound, which should have been fatal, was already beginning to close. And it wasn't just superficial healing. The internal damage was reversing too, the blood vessels and tissue mending themselves as if time was rewinding. Fascinating, Zayler murmured, unable to contain his astonishment. This cannot be possible. He turned to one of his assistants, a Zyrexian medical expert, and demanded a second opinion. Check the scans. Are the readings accurate? The assistant ran another diagnostic, her three eyes scanning the results in disbelief. Doctor, the data. It's consistent. The human is healing faster than any species we've ever documented. Zayler leaned closer to the monitor, his multiple sets of eyes widening in amazement. The human body's resilience was beyond anything he had ever seen. Where alien races required weeks or even months to fully recover from such traumatic injuries, Hale's body was mending itself in mere hours. At first, Zayler thought it was an anomaly, a fluke, but as the hours passed, the healing only accelerated. The human's heartbeat, once slow and irregular, now beat with perfect rhythm. The shattered ribs were mending, the damaged organs repairing themselves with a speed that defied his understanding of biology. What kind of creature is this? Zayler thought aloud. He had heard rumors of human resilience, of their ability to withstand extreme pain, survive injuries that would incapacitate other species, but this was beyond any exaggeration. As the final wound closed completely and the human began to stir, Zayler could hardly contain his astonishment. Captain Hale opened his eyes, his expression one of groggy confusion but no signs of pain. "You're alive?" Zayler asked, almost breathlessly. Hale looked up at the alien doctor, his voice hoarse but full of determination. "Not just alive, Doc. I'm good as new. Just give me a minute to get my bearings." Zayler could hardly believe it. He had seen many warriors from various species, each capable in their own right, but Hale's ability to recover so quickly was unheard of, even for a battle-hardened soldier. He had no special enhancements, no advanced technology to aid his recovery. It was simply human nature. "I must know more about you," Zayler said, his voice filled with awe. "Your species is a mystery to me." Hale, now sitting up and starting to examine his surroundings, chuckled. "We're not as mysterious as you think. We're just tough. We don't give up, no matter what happens to us. That's the human way." Zayler couldn't help but smile at the statement. He had seen countless creatures with incredible abilities, but nothing quite like this. The sheer tenacity of humanity was unparalleled. If humans could survive the impossible, what else could they accomplish? He paused, letting the weight of his thoughts settle in. "I will report this to the council. Your species may very well be the key to understanding something far greater than healing alone." Captain Hale simply nodded, grinning. "We may not have the fanciest tech, but we've got something that gets the job done, Hart." As Hale stood and prepared to leave, Zyler could only watch in amazement. He had been stunned by a single human's miraculous recovery, but deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. Humanity was capable of so much more than the galaxy had yet realized. In that moment, Dr. Zyler understood, humans were more than survivors. They were a force to be reckoned with. Alien doctor shocked as human body heals from fatal wound, best HFY stories, continued. Days passed since Captain Hale's miraculous recovery, and Dr. Zyler found himself unable to shake the profound impact the human's resilience had left on him. He had treated hundreds of species, from the near-immortal Vantari to the fast-healing Tigron, but nothing could compare to the astonishing regeneration capabilities of a human body. His thoughts often returned to that pivotal moment in the med bay, where he had watched in awe as the impossible unfolded before him. But what truly struck Zyler was the revelation that humans weren't just physically resilient, they were mentally and emotionally unyielding as well. He had read reports of human soldiers in battles that spanned entire galaxies, surviving impossible odds and never surrendering. Yet he had never fully grasped what made them different until now. Determined to learn more, Zyler reached out to the Intergalactic Alliance for permission to study the human species further. The Council, intrigued by his findings, granted him the necessary clearance. What followed was an unprecedented series of interviews and medical evaluations with not just Captain Hale, but other human volunteers who had survived extreme conditions. The more Zyler studied, the more he realized that humanity's resilience wasn't limited to their ability to heal. It was woven into their very essence. It was in their refusal to accept defeat, in their drive to adapt, and in their capacity for hope, even when faced with certain death. Each test, each observation, revealed more about the unique biology and psyche of humans, and the more Zyler discovered, the more he marveled at them. One particular human subject stood out, Lieutenant Sarah Jacobs, a woman who had survived a catastrophic crash on a hostile, barren moon. Her survival instincts were honed to an extraordinary degree, and though she had suffered broken bones, extreme dehydration, and exposure to harsh environmental conditions, she had lived for days before being rescued. Unlike any other species Zyler had studied, Lieutenant Jacobs had not simply survived, she had actively fought for her life in ways that defied medical logic. During one of their sessions, Zyler asked her, "Lieutenant, how did you manage to survive such dire circumstances?" Jacobs, leaning back in her chair, gave a wry smile. "It's simple, really. We don't just wait for a miracle, we make our own. When you've been knocked down so many times, you get used to getting back up. That's what we do." Zyler's antenna twitched in confusion. "But how do you explain the rapid healing, the adaptability? No other species I've encountered displays such traits. How is this possible?" Jacob's gaze softened as she considered his question. "It's part of being human, Doc. We don't always know how we do it. Sometimes, it's just pure willpower, and when you have the right people around you, it's even easier to keep going. We push ourselves to the limit, and beyond, because that's what we do. It's in our blood." The answer struck Zyler like a revelation. It wasn't just the physical resilience, it was the mental and emotional fortitude that made humans extraordinary. They didn't just heal fast or survive, they thrived because of their relentless determination and their unshakable belief in their own ability to overcome. Over the following weeks, Zyler continued to study humans, cataloging their abilities, behaviors, and physiology. He observed how their minds, often driven by deep emotions like love, loyalty, and camaraderie, played a crucial role in their survival. Humans had an innate drive not just to survive, but to live, to fight for their place in the universe, no matter the cost. The more Zyler learned, the more he began to see humans not just as another species, but as something entirely unique, a force of nature. They weren't merely adaptable, or capable of healing quickly. They had something no other species had, a relentless, unwavering spirit that made them nearly unstoppable. Their greatest strength lay not in their physical prowess, but in their hearts and minds. One evening, after reviewing another round of data, Zyler stood in the medical facility's observation deck, gazing out at the stars. He couldn't help but wonder, what if this was only the beginning? If humanity was capable of surviving and thriving in ways that no other species could, what might they achieve when faced with challenges far greater than they had yet encountered? His thoughts were interrupted by a voice behind him. "You seem deep in thought, Doctor." He turned to see Captain Hale standing in the doorway, looking as healthy as ever. Despite the brutal wound he had sustained just days earlier, Hale gave him a knowing smile. "I've been thinking about you," Zyler admitted. "Your species, it's unlike anything I've ever encountered. I believe I've barely scratched the surface of what makes you, well, you." Hale chuckled. "Well, Doc, you've got a lot more to learn. But one thing's for sure, humans don't back down. Ever." Zyler looked at Hale, a newfound respect in his gaze. "I think I've come to understand that. Your species, you truly are a force to be reckoned with." Hale's grin widened. "Glad you finally figured it out. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a war to win." Zyler watched him leave, the weight of the truth settling heavily on his mind. The universe had many great civilizations, but humans were different, remarkably so. The medical records would show one thing, but what truly made them extraordinary was something that couldn't be measured or quantified: their unyielding will to persevere, to push forward no matter the cost. As Zyler returned to his work, he felt a renewed sense of awe and admiration. The galaxy had never seen anything like humanity, and it was becoming increasingly clear that Earth's warriors were destined to leave an indelible mark on the universe. Humans were no longer just survivors. They were becoming something more, an unstoppable force, a beacon of hope in a galaxy full of darkness. And no one, not even the mighty alien civilizations, could ignore them any longer. The story of humanity was just beginning. Alien doctor shocked as human body heals from fatal wound, best HFY stories, continued. As the weeks turned into months, Dr. Zyler's study of humans became more than just academic curiosity. It evolved into a profound fascination that bordered on obsession. The results were astonishing. Every human he encountered seemed to defy the normal limits of biology. Each new test, each new interview, only deepened his belief that humans were unlike any species he had ever encountered. One particularly interesting observation occurred when Zyler encountered a group of human diplomats, delegates from Earth on a peace mission to broker an agreement with a long-standing enemy species, the Rooker. The Rooker were known throughout the galaxy for their brutal tactics, and negotiations with them were often hostile, with the mere presence of a diplomat from another species a dangerous act. Yet, as the humans entered the negotiation room, Dr. Zyler observed an entirely new dimension to their abilities. The humans were calm, collected, and resolute in their demeanor. Despite the glaring threats from the Rooker, who loomed over them with their towering presence, the humans remained unfazed. It wasn't just their physical strength or endurance that impressed Zyler, it was their mental fortitude. These humans, Zyler mused, do not fear what other species would find impossible to face. They do not bow to pressure. They thrive in the most hostile environments. As the negotiations continued, Zyler observed one human delegate, Ambassador Olivia Hargrave, engage in a quiet but intense dialogue with the Rooker leader, making subtle yet unyielding points that seemed to disarm the usually hostile Rooker. The Rooker leader, a towering figure with a reputation for brutality, sat down, seemingly subdued by her steady gaze and unshakable resolve. Her calmness, coupled with a deep understanding of the complexities of the situation, allowed her to stand her ground when any other species would have crumbled under the threat. This, Zyler thought, is their true strength, not just their ability to heal from injuries, but their unyielding determination, their resilience of spirit. When the negotiation ended, the Rooker leader, unexpectedly, offered a truce, a gesture that would have been impossible under normal circumstances. As the humans left the room, victorious in their mission, Zyler marveled at their ability to adapt, even in such dangerous and high-stakes situations. Soon, he began to understand that the human mind was far more advanced than many of the galaxy's most powerful supercomputers. Their ability to strategize, adapt, and overcome in the face of danger was unparalleled. No species he had studied possessed the same mental flexibility. Humans had an almost intuitive understanding of the fight or flight response, but they didn't merely react. They planned, they outsmarted, and when needed, they used compassion and diplomacy to win over enemies that seemed impossible to reason with. Zyler had seen hundreds of species operate under the logic of brute force or calculated cold strategy, but humans? They had an uncanny ability to harness their emotions, whether it be empathy, pride, or love, and use them to power through what would otherwise be insurmountable odds. His growing admiration for humanity's qualities didn't go unnoticed. Other species, once skeptical of the humans' inclusion in intergalactic councils, began to see the value of their unique abilities. In a universe where civilizations often relied on force or cunning, humans had something else, the ability to inspire, to create lasting bonds where only animosity existed before. Xyler was beginning to see humans as the glue that could bind the galaxy's fractured alliances into something stronger. One evening, as Xyler sat in his lab, reviewing the latest round of data, a message from the Intergalactic Council arrived. It was an official request. The humans, led by Ambassador Hargrave, were being nominated to take part in a new intergalactic peace initiative, one that could unite the various factions of the galaxy into a common cause. Xyler was taken aback. They want humans to lead such a delicate mission? A species that, only a few months ago, I believed to be nothing more than a curious anomaly? He shook his head in disbelief. But maybe that's exactly why they're the perfect fit. His mind buzzed with possibilities. A species that could heal from wounds that would incapacitate any other creature. A species that could stand firm in the face of overwhelming odds. A species that could unite even the most hostile of enemies. Perhaps humanity wasn't just a force to be reckoned with in battle. They were the key to the future of galactic diplomacy and unity. When Captain Hale arrived at his lab to check in after a successful mission, Xyler didn't mince words. I have come to understand your species in ways I never thought possible. You are not just survivors, Captain. You are builders. You are healers. And not just physically, but in every sense of the word. You're the answer the galaxy has been waiting for. Hale, ever the pragmatic soldier, grinned. We just do what needs to be done, Doc. But it's good to know that someone's finally seeing us for who we are. Xyler nodded, a rare smile creeping onto his alien features. I do, Captain. You are human, and in ways that defy understanding. You are the future. And as Hale left the lab to join his team for the next mission, Dr. Xyler couldn't help but feel that, in his years of study, he had only scratched the surface of humanity's potential. Soon, humanity would not just be the galaxy's toughest survivors, they would become its greatest peacemakers. And Xyler, for the first time in his career, felt honored to be a witness to it all. Humanity was no longer just an enigma. They were the torchbearers of the future, unmatched in resilience, unmatched in heart, and the galaxy, for better or worse, would soon know that the humans had arrived, and they were here to stay. The era of humanity had only just begun. Alien Doctor shocked as human body heals from fatal wound, best HFY stories, continued. As the galaxy began to take notice of humanity's astonishing resilience and diplomacy, the reputation of the human species grew far beyond what any of them had expected. Dr. Xyler, though still fascinated by their physiology, found himself becoming increasingly involved in the broader implications of what this meant for the galaxy's future. A pivotal moment arrived when an unexpected crisis rocked the galaxy. A rogue faction of a once great alien empire, known as the Draxxer, began launching aggressive strikes against several peaceful systems. The Draxxer were a brutal race, genetically engineered for war. Their warriors were towering, heavily armored, and equipped with technology capable of wiping out entire planets in a single strike. For years, the Draxxer had been a dormant threat, but now they were back with a vengeance, and no one knew how to stop them. The Intergalactic Council was in disarray. The Rooker, despite their recent peace agreement, were hesitant to intervene. The Tigron, known for their strength and prowess in battle, were unwilling to engage in another war, especially against an enemy as relentless as the Draxxer. It was in this moment of desperate need that the humans stepped forward. Captain Hale, along with several other human military leaders, offered the council a bold proposal. Instead of a traditional military response, the humans suggested a multifaceted approach that combined diplomacy, intelligence gathering, and, if necessary, surgical precision military strikes. Their plan was unorthodox, but it was also the only one that brought all factions together, leveraging humanity's strength in resilience, adaptability, and their unique diplomatic tact. We fight smarter, not harder, Captain Hale had said during the briefing. We use every asset we have, military, intelligence, and diplomatic resources, to outmaneuver the Draxxer at every turn. We don't let them turn this into a war of attrition. We'll take their empire apart piece by piece, and we'll do it with precision. The proposal was met with skepticism by many, but humanity's record of success in unlikely situations could not be ignored. A tentative alliance was formed, with humans at the helm, and a joint task force was established. It was unprecedented. Never before had a single species been tasked with leading such a large-scale campaign in the galaxy. And yet, here they were, humans, once considered primitive by many, now trusted to save the galaxy from annihilation. Dr. Xyler was tasked with advising on the medical and biological aspects of the mission. His studies of the human body had given him an appreciation for their adaptability, but he had no idea just how far that adaptability would extend. As the war against the Draxer unfolded, Xyler found himself in awe of humanity's leadership. They did not hesitate when faced with overwhelming odds, nor did they let fear drive their decisions. Every human soldier, diplomat, and strategist seemed to have an innate sense of how to turn even the smallest advantage into victory. One of the most striking examples came when a small human force was tasked with infiltrating a Draxer military base on a heavily fortified moon. The mission was deemed nearly impossible by the other factions, but Captain Hale's team, using a combination of advanced stealth technology and sheer human ingenuity, managed to break through the Draxer defenses and extract crucial intelligence. The Draxer, known for their brutal tactics and overwhelming numbers, were caught completely off guard. "We don't need to be the biggest army," Hale had said afterward. "We just need to be the smartest." It was this mentality that began to shift the tide of the conflict. The Draxer, once seen as an unstoppable force, now found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Their once iron grip on their empire started to falter as the human-led coalition struck strategic blows, undermining their resources, sabotaging their supply lines, and turning former allies against them. In the medical field, Dr. Xyler continued to witness the miraculous nature of human biology. Even under the most extreme conditions, the human body proved capable of unimaginable feats. Soldiers who were critically injured on the battlefield, their limbs severed or organs pierced, would shock Xyler with their resilience. He had never seen anything like it before. They would heal rapidly, sometimes even without the need for advanced medical treatment. Their bodies seemed to reject death itself. Dr. Xyler once witnessed a human soldier, Sergeant Emma Holt, who had been gravely injured by a Draxer energy blade. The wound had torn through her torso, and there was no hope of survival, at least. There shouldn't have been. Yet within a matter of hours, the wound began to close, her vital signs stabilized, and she was back on her feet within days. "I thought she was done for," Xyler admitted to his assistant as they observed Holt's recovery. "How is this possible?" The assistant, equally perplexed, replied, "Perhaps it's not just the body that's healing, it's the will to survive. It's as if they refuse to give up." Xyler considered this, his multiple eyes narrowing thoughtfully. Perhaps that is the true nature of humanity. It is not just the body that is resilient, but the spirit. As the war continued, it became clear that humanity's approach was working. With each passing day, their influence and leadership grew stronger. The Draxer, who had once been feared throughout the galaxy, were slowly being pushed back, their empire crumbling piece by piece under the relentless pressure from the human-led coalition. And all the while, Dr. Xyler's respect for humanity deepened. He began to see them not just as an anomaly or a curious species, but as the galaxy's last hope, a species capable of taking on the impossible, of uniting disparate factions, and overcoming any challenge with sheer willpower and ingenuity. One evening, as Xyler sat in his lab reviewing the latest reports, a message came through from Captain Hale himself. "Dr. Xyler," the message began, "I know you've been studying us for some time now, and I wanted to thank you for your insight. You've helped us understand just how important our ability to heal, adapt, and persevere really is. We're winning this war, not because we're the strongest, but because we never give up, and as long as we keep fighting, we'll make sure the galaxy never has to face the darkness alone." Xyler sat back in his chair, a deep sense of awe and respect filling him. In that moment, he understood something fundamental about humanity. They didn't just survive in the face of adversity, they thrived. And with that, Dr. Xyler made a silent vow. He would continue to study humanity, to learn from them, and to ensure that their unique qualities would never be lost to the universe. Because if there was one thing he had learned for certain, it was this: humanity was the galaxy's greatest strength. and they were just getting started. Alien doctor shocked as human body heals from fatal wound, best HFY stories, continued. As the human-led coalition gained momentum against the Draxer, the galaxy began to look at humanity not just as survivors, but as conquerors in a new and profound way. The story of their relentless will to persevere against impossible odds spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the galaxy. Their victories, though tactically brilliant, were also seen as a symbol of something much deeper. Humanity was an unstoppable force, not because of superior firepower, but because of an indomitable spirit that refused to break. Dr. Zayler, once an alien doctor who saw humanity as an anomaly, now found himself standing at the forefront of something truly revolutionary. While the war continued to unfold, Zayler's role expanded. The coalition began to seek his expertise, not just in understanding human biology, but also in applying his research to the war effort. He was called upon to work with human engineers and scientists to understand how their unique biological processes could inform new technologies. For example, Zayler's work on human tissue regeneration led to the development of revolutionary healing pods, devices that mimicked the rapid tissue recovery seen in human bodies, drastically increasing the speed at which soldiers could be treated and returned to battle. But it wasn't just the medical technology that intrigued Zayler, it was the psychological resilience that defined humanity. One day, while reviewing new reports on the human military tactics in the ongoing war, he was struck by an internal communication intercepted from the battlefield. It was a simple message, but it left an indelible mark on Zayler's mind: no one left behind. These words were the mantra of humanity's military strategy, something they lived by without question. Their soldiers fought not just for themselves, but for each other, a sense of camaraderie and loyalty so deep that no human soldier would ever abandon another, no matter the cost. They didn't just fight for victory. They fought for those beside them, and that, Zayler realized, was the core of their unshakable resolve. A few days later, while embedded with a special human unit in the field, Zayler saw the very essence of this loyalty in action. A squadron had been caught in an ambush by a Draxer raid, and while they had successfully repelled the attack, several soldiers were critically injured. They were far from any medical facility, and there were no reinforcements available. But one soldier, Lieutenant Jason Rivera, refused to leave them behind. Despite being injured himself, he helped carry the wounded back to safety, covering their retreat even when it seemed certain that he would not make it. When Zayler arrived at the extraction point with a medical team, he was astonished to find that Rivera had not only kept his squad alive, but had also managed to stabilize their injuries using rudimentary tools and techniques. It was nothing short of a miracle. "How did you do this?" Zayler asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Rivera, drenched in sweat and blood, looked at him with a grim smile. "You don't leave anyone behind. It's what we do. It's what makes us human." In that moment, Zayler realized something critical. Humanity's strength wasn't just physical, and it wasn't just mental. It was their collective belief in the value of each individual. Their unwavering commitment to one another created an unbreakable bond that no force, no enemy, and no hardship could sever. The war raged on, but with every victory, Zayler found himself more convinced that humanity had more to offer than just brute strength. As the Draxer's once imposing empire crumbled, it was clear that the galaxy's greatest weapon against them wasn't some superior technology or overpowering military force, it was the unyielding will of the human spirit. The turning point came when the Draxer leader, an imposing warlord named Zorak the Unbroken, faced off against a human force in what would be the final battle of the conflict. Zorak had watched his empire fall apart under the human-led coalition, and in his desperation, he sought to wipe out the humans once and for all. But when Captain Hale and his team confronted Zorak, it was not through brute force. It wasn't about overwhelming the Draxer with sheer numbers. Instead, Hale used what humanity had used to win every other conflict, their ability to outthink and outlast. He initiated a negotiation. "I know your people are broken, Zorak," Hale said, his voice steady. "You can fight to the death, but you will never win. There's no honor in this anymore. You've lost everything, but you don't have to lose your life as well. Surrender, and we'll help you rebuild, together." For a long moment, Zorak stood in silence, his massive form towering over Hale, but the weight of humanity's unwavering conviction, Their willingness to show mercy even in the face of such brutality had a profound impact on the warlord. Slowly, Zorak dropped his weapon and knelt before Hale, signaling the end of the Draxer threat. It was an unimaginable moment in galactic history. The galaxy watched as a brutal conqueror, a symbol of unrelenting war, laid down his arms because of the compassion and tactical brilliance of humans. That was the moment that cemented humanity's place in the galaxy. No longer seen as a primitive species, humans were now recognized as not just survivors, but as the architects of peace and the true leaders of the future. In the aftermath of the war, Dr. Xyler was once again called upon to assist with rebuilding efforts. He worked closely with human medical teams, but now, his role was less about research and more about sharing the lessons he had learned from them. He had come to understand that what made humanity truly remarkable wasn't just their biological capabilities or military strategies, it was their capacity to inspire others, to rebuild, to heal, and to lead with unshakable conviction. As he sat in the council chambers, reflecting on how far humanity had come, Xyler couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. To think, he whispered to himself, I once believed the humans to be nothing more than a curiosity. Now, they are the future. And as the galaxy moved forward, he knew one thing for certain, no force in the universe could stop the rise of humanity. They were the galaxy's new hope, and nothing could extinguish the light they had brought into the cosmos. Humanity was no longer just a species. They were the cornerstone of a new era, a beacon of resilience, strength, and compassion that would shape the future of the galaxy for millennia to come. Alien doctor shocked as human body heals from fatal wound, best HFY stories, final chapter. With the conclusion of the war and the Draxer's surrender, the galaxy had entered a new era, one where humanity's remarkable abilities were no longer just a curious anomaly, but a beacon of hope. The Intergalactic Council had transformed into a more unified body, with humanity playing a leading role. Their reputation as not just survivors, but as skilled diplomats, strategists, and compassionate leaders, was solidified beyond all doubt. Dr. Xyler, now a renowned expert in human biology and psychology, had become something of a celebrity. His studies on human resilience had become essential reading for other species who wished to understand the secret behind humanity's almost supernatural ability to overcome insurmountable odds. But Xyler's respect for humans went beyond mere scientific curiosity. He had come to deeply admire their spirit, how, even in the most hopeless of situations, they never surrendered. As part of his continuing collaboration with the human leaders, Xyler found himself invited to Earth. This was a historic moment, the first time a non-human species had been invited to Earth for official diplomatic and scientific exchange. He was both excited and anxious. Earth, a planet he had heard so much about, was now the center of the galaxy's future. As the ship descended into Earth's atmosphere, Xyler marveled at the landscape below. He had seen planets with towering cities, vast alien jungles, and exotic oceans, but Earth was different, it felt alive. Upon landing, Xyler was greeted by Captain Hale himself, who had become a hero throughout the galaxy. Dr. Xyler, Hale greeted him warmly. I trust you had a comfortable flight? Xyler could barely suppress his awe. Comfortable, yes, but more than that, I am fascinated by your planet. The energy, the diversity, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. Hale chuckled. Well, get used to it. This is home for us, and we're sharing it with the galaxy now. As they toured Earth, Xyler found himself overwhelmed by the sheer vibrancy of the planet. The cities were marvels of innovation, while the natural beauty, ranging from lush forests to deserts to vast oceans, was breathtaking. But what struck Xyler the most was the people. Everywhere he went, he saw the same fierce determination in humans that had defined their victories. Whether it was the bustling streets of New York or the peaceful landscapes of rural Japan, there was a sense of unity and resilience that transcended everything he had encountered in his years of intergalactic travel. The highlight of his visit came when he was invited to speak at a grand assembly of the United Earth Nations. It was a symbol of humanity's newfound role as a leader on the galactic stage. Xyler, standing at the podium before thousands of humans and other species, felt an overwhelming sense of pride, both in humanity and in the galaxy's future. As the crowd waited in anticipation, Xyler took a moment to compose himself before beginning his speech. Fellow beings of the galaxy, it is an honor to stand before you today. I have spent many years studying the human species, both in their biology and their behavior. At first, I believed them to be fragile, primitive, and, frankly, easily breakable. But I was wrong. In my studies, I learned that humans are not fragile at all. They are, in fact, the most resilient species I have ever encountered. Their bodies can heal from injuries that would be fatal to others. But more importantly, their hearts and minds possess an indomitable will that can turn the tide of any battle, overcome any hardship, and bring peace even to the most divided worlds. Xyler paused, letting his words sink in. When I first arrived in the galaxy, I believed that only the strongest, most ruthless species could dominate. But now, I stand before you and say this: it is not strength alone that defines a species. It is their ability to unite, to care for one another, to fight not for personal glory but for the greater good. And in these traits, humanity stands unparalleled. The room erupted in applause, a thunderous cheer from the humans and their allies. Xyler smiled, a rare sight for an alien of his species, who was known for his stoic expression. He knew this moment would be remembered throughout the galaxy for centuries to come. The humans had proven themselves time and time again, not just in battle, but in their ability to inspire others. They had united fractured factions, brought peace to war-torn planets, and, perhaps most importantly, offered hope to species that had long given up on finding a way out of conflict. As Xyler finished his speech, Captain Hale came up beside him, clapping him on the back. "You did great. Document." Xyler looked at him, a deep sense of admiration in his alien eyes. "It is your species that has done great things, Captain. I am simply an observer, but I believe this is just the beginning." Hale nodded. "I hope you're right." The days following the assembly were filled with meetings, collaborations, and celebrations. The human-led coalition was now a reality, a united force for peace, exploration, and the defense of all sentient life in the galaxy. Even species that had been hostile to humanity in the past now looked toward them with respect, recognizing that the strength of humanity lay not just in their military prowess but in their unwavering commitment to help and protect others. Xyler found himself increasingly immersed in the human way of thinking, seeing the world not just as a scientist or observer, but as a participant in something larger. The more he learned about their history, their struggles, and their triumphs, the more he realized that humanity's greatest strength was their ability to rise above adversity, to keep pushing forward even when the odds seemed insurmountable. He returned to his lab aboard his ship, reviewing the data he had gathered from his time on Earth. It was no longer just about understanding human physiology. It was about understanding the essence of what made them who they were, a species not defined by their strength alone, but by their resilience, compassion, and willpower. And as Xyler reflected on his journey, from the moment he had first witnessed a human heal from a fatal wound to the historic assembly he had just attended, he couldn't help but feel that he had witnessed something extraordinary. Humanity was no longer a species on the fringes of galactic civilization. They had become its heart. The future of the galaxy was in their hands, and Xyler, now a true believer in humanity's potential, was proud to be part of it. The age of humanity had arrived, and nothing, not even the darkest corners of the universe, could stop them now.